Imagine waking up tomorrow morning and discovering that gasoline prices have doubled overnight. The cost of transportation begins to rise everywhere. Airlines suddenly cancel hundreds of flights because fuel costs have become too unpredictable. Factories slow down production because energy prices are climbing beyond control. Food prices begin creeping higher as transportation and manufacturing costs surge. Financial markets from New York to Tokyo begin reacting with panic. Economists appear on television explaining that the world economy is facing a sudden shock, and yet the cause of this chaos is not a massive war between superpowers. It is not a devastating natural disaster. It is not even a global financial crisis. The trigger comes from a narrow body of water that many people have never heard of, a place where ships carrying the energy that powers modern civilization must pass through every single day. A place where even the smallest disruption could echo across continents and oceans. This place is called the Strait of Hormuz. At first glance, it looks almost insignificant on the map. It is just a thin line separating countries in the Middle East. But beneath that calm surface flows something far more powerful than water. Every day, enormous oil tankers pass through this narrow corridor, carrying millions of barrels of crude oil. These shipments fuel cars, airplanes, factories, power plants, and industries around the globe. Because of this, the Strait of Hormuz has become one of the most strategically important waterways on Earth. Governments watch it carefully. Militaries patrol its waters constantly. Global markets react instantly whenever tensions rise near it. It is more than a shipping route. It is a pressure point of the modern world where geography, energy, politics, and economics collide in ways that could reshape the future of entire nations. To truly understand why the Strait of Hormuz matters so much, we must first understand its geography. On a world map, it lies between the northern coast of Iran and the southern shores of Oman and the United Arab Emirates. It connects the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman, which then opens into the vast Arabian Sea and eventually the wider oceans of the world. In simple terms, it is the gateway through which the oil of the Persian Gulf reaches global markets. The strait is surprisingly narrow. At its tightest point, the distance between the two sides is only about 21 miles. For a region that carries such enormous global importance, this distance is astonishingly small. Yet the lanes that ships actually use are even narrower. Massive oil tankers moving in opposite directions travel through shipping channels that are only a few miles wide. These vessels are among the largest ships ever built by humanity, some stretching longer than skyscrapers are tall. Navigating such enormous ships through such narrow lanes requires precision, coordination, and constant monitoring. Despite these challenges, thousands of vessels pass through the strait every year. Oil tankers, cargo ships, and gas carriers all move through this corridor like blood flowing through a vital artery. The Strait of Hormuz connects the energy-rich Persian Gulf with the rest of the world, turning this small geographic passage into a lifeline for global trade. Without it, much of the oil produced in the Middle East would remain trapped inside the Gulf. The strait therefore functions like a valve, controlling the movement of energy across continents. When it remains open and stable, global markets operate smoothly. But when tensions rise around it, the world begins to feel uneasy. Modern civilization depends heavily on energy. Every vehicle on the road, every airplane in the sky, and every factory producing goods relies on fuel to operate. Much of that fuel originates in the oil-rich countries surrounding the Persian Gulf. Every day, an enormous volume of oil flows through the Strait of Hormuz. Roughly 20 million barrels pass through this narrow passage daily. That represents nearly 1/5 of the entire world's petroleum consumption. To imagine this scale, picture countless supertankers moving continuously through the strait, each carrying massive quantities of crude oil destined for different corners of the world. These shipments travel to major energy-hungry nations, including China, India, Japan, and South Korea. They also supply markets in Europe and beyond. In addition to crude oil, the strait carries large quantities of liquefied natural gas and other energy resources that power industries and homes across continents. The Strait of Hormuz therefore serves as one of the most important transportation routes for global energy supplies. If something were to block this passage, the consequences would be immediate and dramatic. Oil markets would panic, energy prices would spike, governments would rush to secure alternative supplies. Economists warn that even a temporary closure could disrupt global supply chains and push energy prices to extreme levels. This is why the strait is often described as the most critical oil choke point in the world. Its influence extends far beyond the Middle East. It reaches into the daily lives of billions of people who rely on affordable energy to power their lives and economies. Behind the Strait of Hormuz lies a region that holds some of the richest energy reserves on the planet. The Persian Gulf is home to several countries whose economies are deeply tied to oil production. These nations include Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, and Qatar. Together, these countries possess a significant portion of the world's proven oil reserves. For decades, they have supplied energy to the rest of the world, making the Persian Gulf one of the most economically important regions on Earth. For these nations, exporting oil is not simply a matter of trade. It is the foundation of their economies. The revenues generated from oil exports help fund national budgets, infrastructure projects, education systems, and social programs. But for this system to work, the oil must reach international markets, and that means passing through the Strait of Hormuz. The strait therefore acts as the gateway connecting the oil fields of the Persian Gulf to global consumers. Tankers leaving ports in Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Iraq, and Qatar all travel toward this narrow passage before heading into open waters. Because of this, the prosperity of these nations is closely tied to the stability of the strait. Any disruption in shipping could reduce export revenues and threaten economic stability in the region. At the same time, the rest of the world depends on the steady flow of energy from these countries. This mutual dependence creates a complex web of economic relationships, where the stability of a narrow waterway influences the prosperity of entire economies. The Strait of Hormuz has never been merely a peaceful shipping route. For decades, it has also been a stage for geopolitical tension and military confrontation. One of the most dramatic periods occurred during the Iran-Iraq War in the 1980s. As the conflict intensified, both sides began attacking oil tankers traveling through the Persian Gulf. This period became known as the Tanker War. Dozens of vessels were damaged or destroyed. The attacks created fear throughout the global shipping industry. Insurance costs for tankers skyrocketed, and many crews feared navigating through the dangerous waters. International powers soon became involved to protect shipping routes. Naval forces from several countries began escorting tankers through the region to ensure that oil could continue flowing to global markets. Even after the war ended, tensions around the strait never completely disappeared. Political disputes, economic sanctions, and regional rivalries have continued to create moments of uncertainty. Over the years, there have been incidents involving the seizure of ships, naval confrontations, and threats to disrupt shipping traffic. Each time such events occur, global markets react quickly because the stakes are so high. The history of the Strait of Hormuz shows that this narrow passage is not only a geographic feature, it is also a geopolitical flashpoint where international interests often collide. Whenever tensions rise around the Strait of Hormuz, the effects are felt far beyond the Middle East. Energy markets are extremely sensitive to disruptions in supply, and the strait represents one of the most vulnerable points in the global energy system. Even rumors of potential conflict can cause oil prices to rise sharply. Traders and investors closely monitor news from the region, knowing that any threat to shipping could reduce global supply. When military incidents or political disputes occur, shipping companies sometimes become cautious about sending vessels through the area. Insurance companies may increase premiums for ships traveling in the region, raising transportation costs. These costs eventually pass through the global economy. Higher energy prices affect transportation, manufacturing, agriculture, and countless other industries. The ripple effects can be felt in everyday life through rising prices for goods and services. This interconnected system demonstrates how deeply the global economy relies on the safe passage of ships through this narrow corridor. The Strait of Hormuz may appear small on a map, but its influence reaches into the daily lives of people across the world. Despite its risks, the Strait of Hormuz provides enormous economic advantages for both the countries of the Persian Gulf and the global economy. First, it offers the most efficient route for transporting Middle Eastern oil to international markets. Without this passage, ships would need to travel far longer distances or rely on expensive land pipelines. Second, the strait helps keep transportation costs relatively low. Shorter shipping routes mean lower fuel costs and faster delivery times, which help stabilize global energy prices. Third, the steady flow of oil through the strait supports economic growth in the Gulf region. Revenues from oil exports have allowed many countries to build modern cities, develop infrastructure, and invest in national development projects. Finally, the strait functions as a critical trade corridor connecting different parts of the world. Ships carrying goods between Asia, Europe, and Africa often pass through nearby waters, making the region a key hub for international commerce. However, the same factors that make the Strait of Hormuz so important also make it vulnerable. Its narrow geography means that even a small military conflict could disrupt shipping traffic. Mines, missiles, or naval blockades could potentially halt the movement of tankers. Such disruption would likely cause oil prices to surge dramatically. Countries that depend heavily on imported energy could face economic pressure, while industries worldwide would struggle with higher costs. Another challenge involves shipping insurance. During periods of tension, insurance premiums for vessels traveling through the strait can increase significantly. These costs ultimately affect global trade. Because of these risks, many countries are exploring alternative routes, such as pipelines that bypass the strait. However, these alternatives can only carry a portion of the region's total oil exports. For now, the Strait of Hormuz remains the most important gateway for energy leaving the Persian Gulf. The story of the Strait of Hormuz offers several powerful lessons about the modern world. One lesson is that geography still shapes global power. Even in an age of advanced technology, certain locations hold enormous strategic importance simply because of their position on the map. Another lesson is the importance of energy security. Nations increasingly understand that reliable energy supplies are essential for economic stability and national security. The strait also demonstrates the value of international cooperation. Naval patrols, diplomatic negotiations, and agreements between nations often help ensure that shipping routes remain open. Perhaps the most important lesson is how interconnected our world has become. A crisis in a narrow waterway, thousands of miles away, can influence economies, markets, and households across the globe. The Strait of Hormuz may appear to be just a small stretch of water between two coastlines, but its impact on the world is enormous. Every tanker that passes through it carries more than oil. It carries the energy that powers cities, fuels transportation networks, and drives global industries. The strait connects continents and economies, linking the oil fields of the Persian Gulf with the energy needs of nations around the world. Yet it also serves as a reminder of how fragile the global system can be. So much depends on the stability of this narrow corridor. As ships continue to move through its waters day and night, they symbolize the delicate balance that keeps the modern world functioning. A balance maintained by geography, diplomacy, and the constant movement of trade. And among all the strategic locations on Earth, few are as important as the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow passage to water whose influence stretches across the entire planet.